Hello and welcome to the Patience to Prosperity podcast, where we learn how to act in opposition of our limiting beliefs in order to reach our fullest potential. Hi guys, it's Lizzie, and today I'm here with a very special guest, someone who I've been wanting to have on the pod for a while, and who was a little hesitant on coming on at first, but I think she's warming up a little bit, so welcome her with open arms. I have my grandma here. Say hi.
Hi, everybody.
So I'm first just going to have her introduce herself a little bit. Just tell the podcast a little bit about your life, who you are, and take the mic.
All right. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. I went to parochial schools. I became a secretary in Manhattan. I was there for about 5.5 years, and then met the love of my life, my best friend, my soulmate.
Okay, you're going to make me cry.
and we were married in 1967. Married for 52 years before he passed. And we had 2 daughters and 7 grandchildren and a good marriage. I mean, we did have arguments. We weren't perfect, but
that's
we had
marriage.
A real solid marriage.
But I will say, my grandparents were the perfect definition of what a loving relationship looks like. You guys really brought that to me. That's my reference of what a good, healthy, loving relationship is supposed to be like, where it's balanced between 2 people, you know?
Right. Well, we learned that the only way you can do that is having God in your marriage.
Yeah.
And love is sacrifice. That's it, period.
Yeah.
And it's a 50-50 proposition. It's not to be one-sided. You give and you take, but the giving is where the love manifests itself.
Right. I always say, what I think, a broad perspective of what all of us were put on here to do, I say it's to love and to be loved.
Absolutely.
That it's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
You, as much as you give love out there, you're also meant to receive it, and you shouldn't feel selfish for wanting that and needing that. It's in our nature,
right.
You know?
Right. But a lot of people define love as an emotion, okay? Mm-hmm. It's really sacrifice. It's thinking of the other person first.
Right.
All the time. You may have an idea you want to do, but you discuss it with your partner.
Yeah.
And agree on it before you make the move.
Right.
And that's in all aspects. It's in your money issues. It's in your raising your children issues. It's in everything.
Yeah.
So, you never make a move totally for yourself or because you thought of it or whatever. It has to be shared.
Yeah.
It has to be shared. And sacrifice is the main way to go.
Yeah.
The quotation is, when you die to yourself, then that you're giving totally, to the other person.
Interesting.
Okay.
So where do you think that self-love plays a role in that then? Do you believe that you have to be completely complacent with yourself and you have to completely love yourself before loving someone else wholly?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to do anything. People can see it in you.
Yeah.
That if you have respect for yourself and others, if you love yourself for who you are, your talents and whatever, then you can truly give. Yeah. And you can truly love.
Well, and I think to love yourself is to understand yourself, and I think that's where it plays a role in, because if you don't love yourself, you don't know yourself, and you don't know how much you deserve love. You don't know how you're supposed to be treated and all that stuff, because you don't even know yourself,
Very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, so today we're just basically, I asked my grandma, she's visiting right now before I go back to school, and I asked her to make a short list of some of the most impactful lessons that she's learned in her life. So she has a little list here for us today. She's going to talk about the experiences that have taught her these lessons and we're just going to chit chat a little bit about them and get deeper into them. Yeah.
Okay. Most of the things I'm going to discuss are not happy. Not happy experiences.
She wanted to preface this before going in.
But if you understand that you learn from things, all things, happy and sad, but I think more impactful is when they're profoundly sad. Things, especially if it concerns other people also.
Yeah.
So the first one I have on my list is 3 weeks after I had our first daughter, I had to leave her and have emergency surgery. It was my appendix, but they removed it just in time before it burst. So it was a horrible ordeal, having to leave her in her crib at 5 o'clock in the morning to be rushed to the hospital. Who was going to care for her while I was in the hospital? And in those days, after surgery, you were in the hospital for a week, 7 days, and picture yourself just getting, after 3 weeks, I was just in a routine.
Yeah.
I was loving her, and then whisked away, and everybody else took over. I pictured people shoving a bottle in her mouth and not doing it right, and being gentle, and are they changing her, and are they, all the motherly things that you would be concerned about. So I learned then that you have to trust that other people will come to your rescue in times like this.
Ooh.
And you have to let it go. You have to just say, when I get back, I'll fix things and I'll pick up where I left off and everything will be okay. So you have to allow people to help you also, because it's good for them to give.
Yes, I say that all the time in the podcast.
Yeah, it's very good for them to give. And I learned that lesson from my husband, because one time I had an appointment and I didn't have anybody to watch the two girls. This is when they were older. And he says, well, why don't you ask Marion, our neighbor across the street? And I said, oh, I don't want to bother anybody. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to. Maybe I'll cancel the appointment. And he said, you know what, Joe? He said, the trouble with that is you're not giving Marion an opportunity to do something for you. You do things for people all the time, and you're not giving her an opportunity. And he even used the expression to do a Christian thing.
Yeah.
And gain grace from it.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't ask her.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I said, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I said, I never thought of it that way. And so I did. I asked her to babysit.
People want to help others. It makes them feel like they're important.
Absolutely.
Like they're doing something with purpose. They're helping someone else, making their lives a little bit easier. You know?
Absolutely.
But I feel like, there's givers and there's takers in the world. And being a giver can be really hard because a lot of the times the takers take advantage of you.
That's right.
And then also a lot of the times you feel guilty and you feel like a burden asking for help.
That's it. That's right.
So I think that's a really great lesson to learn, because also, like you said in the beginning, it was out of your control that you had to go for that surgery when you just had a newborn, and that now they were in, my mom, she was in the care of someone else's hands, and it was completely out of your control. That teaches you that you need to control the controllables. You were literally forced to only focus on yourself at that time, and maybe God had a plan for you that he had to show you early on that lesson, so that when you eventually were raising my mom and my aunt, that you knew that you had to fall back on that you had to also pour into yourself as much as you were pouring into them,
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Okay, the second thing was also like a tragedy. Well, it was a tragedy. It was 3 months after my second child, my second daughter.
Yeah.
My father suddenly passed away at the age of 51. And he was my best buddy, my best pal. I was the firstborn in our family of 4. And until my husband came into my life, he was my life. My father was so reliable, and I went to him for everything. I trusted him explicitly in giving me good advice, and now he wasn't there anymore.
Right.
And so young, and I just had these two little girls, and he was such a good father. We were three girls, and then the last one was a boy. He was such a good father to girls.
I love girl dads.
Yeah. He was just he would have built them doll houses.
Right.
He would have done so much with them and for them.
Never taught them Italian, though. Can you believe that?
And he wanted us to be American. He said, you speak English, that's it. Yeah. But they missed out on him.
Yeah.
And I lost him young. I was only in my 20s, and I felt that we were robbed.
Right.
He was a great guy, and and so I had to learn now to live without a precious person in my life.
Right.
And it was very difficult, but as it would be, God gave me these two children to take care of, and in doing so, it helped me through my grief, because I had to get up and give feedings.
Yeah.
I had to change diapers. I had to make washes.
Yeah.
I had to do things, and it just kept me going and going and going, and it helped me. It helped me a lot to be busy and to be focusing on them rather than my grief.
Yeah.
And
interesting. I feel like it's hard when you lose someone that means so much to you, and then life just keeps on moving. Like, nothing's gonna stay. Nothing's gonna just stand still. Everything's gonna keep going. Work is still gonna come on Monday. Your kids still need to be fed.
Absolutely.
Everything's still gonna be the same.
Right.
You have to live your life exactly how you were supposed to before, but now you're carrying this weight on your shoulders and such pain. And something I wanna comment on before you get into the big lesson that you learned from it. When I've explained this to you, but the podcast doesn't know this. So when I lost my grandpa, which is my grandma's husband, I was super, super close to him too. He's one of my favorite people ever, still to this day. And when I lost him, I was, I think, 13 at the time. I was pretty young. And I always, I was raised in the church, and religion was always really important to my mom especially, but both my parents were raised Catholic. And I felt as though when my grandpa passed away, that it kind of pushed me a little bit farther away from God and farther away from my faith, because, I was so young and naive at the time that I was angry at God. You know how one of the stages of grief is anger?
Absolutely.
So I took it out on God. Right. And I was like, how could God do something so horrible to a person, which, by the way, my grandpa was one of the most religious people I've ever met in my entire life. In my eyes, he was a saint walking on earth. And I could not wrap my head around the fact that God would take him. And the way that he did was so brutal. He made the way he made him suffer. He had a stroke, and then basically couldn't talk or walk or do anything by himself for 3 years. And it was horrible having to watch him wither away like that,
And he also had Parkinson's, and he had...
Oh my God, so much.
Yeah,
and my grandma, she was a warrior through it. I mean, she took care of him through everything all by herself. And obviously she was getting older at the time too, and she's got to lift him out of the wheelchair, she's got to feed him, and he couldn't even eat solid foods at one point, and he's got a million appointments, speech pathologists and everything coming through, and I can't even imagine what you were going through, because I was 13 years old at the time, and I was just I took all of my pain out on God, and it pushed me away from him. Right.
Right. And drew me closer.
And it drew you closer.
That's where I got my strength from.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. It's it's so
love
funny.
Does that,
100%. It's so funny how faith is
can go either way.
Yeah. But I feel a lesson that I've learned most recently is that I feel like you have to have these moments where you feel a little pushed away from your faith in order for it to come back so much stronger. I think you need to dismiss God or whatever higher power you believe in, dismiss that off for a second in order to understand just how vital and how much purpose it brings into your life to believe that you were put here for a reason, and that everything is happening how it's supposed to, even if you can't even wrap your head around it, even if you don't understand why.
Exactly.
Like, I still don't really fully understand why Grandpa was taken from us at his age and his health and how good of a person he was. But, I wouldn't have learned some of the lessons I've learned in my life if he wasn't taken.
Well, and I think that when God takes a person, and it doesn't matter good or bad or whatever,
yeah,
they've done what they were supposed to do.
Exactly.
They accomplished what he wanted them to do.
100%.
Okay? And he was ready.
100%.
I mean, yeah. I haven't told many people this, but
yeah.
About 3 weeks before he passed away, for some reason he was very lucid at that moment. And he looked at me early in the morning. He had just gotten up, and he looked at me, and he didn't talk much because he couldn't.
Yeah.
And he said to me, "I want to kiss God." As clear as I just said that.
Yeah.
My mouth fell open.
Yeah.
I was stunned that he even said anything.
Which, by the way, he was literally nonverbal. He had a stroke and he didn't talk for 3 years.
He had the aphasia where it was very. And when he said that to me, what do you answer someone? And the first thing that came to my head was, and he wants to kiss you, Bill.
Yeah.
And he will.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like I was holding him back, that he wanted to go so badly. Yeah. And that gave me a sense of peace.
Yeah.
That that's what he wanted, and that's what he deserved.
Right.
And
yeah,
I had to let him go.
Yeah. And also, another thing to note, when he passed away, all of us, everyone in my family, felt like he waited until all of us said goodbye. And he knew when it was his time. Like, we all said goodbye to him. My grandma lives in New York. I'm in Connecticut. And we drove up there because we kind of knew it was coming.
Right.
And we all said goodbye to him. And then the night that we left, my grandma, I guess you could tell the story better than me, but you were in the room with him.
Right.
And you can take over from there.
I was sitting next to his bed, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was on oxygen, and so I knew that he was still breathing and everything, and I was so exhausted, and I was fighting my eyes the whole time to keep awake, and I just nodded, and I think it might have been just seconds, and when I opened my eyes, he wasn't breathing anymore, and I knew he was gone, and I felt like he didn't want to see me. He didn't want me, rather, to see him take his last breath,
Yeah.
And so he spared me of that.
Yeah.
And but it was the whole thing was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I was very happy for him, believe it or not, because I knew he was where he wanted to be.
Right.
And thank God, whatever suffering he was going through was over.
Yeah.
And the whole ordeal for him was over. I think it was more painful than actual physical pain to not be able to walk, run, or speak.
Yeah.
It was like he was in a prison of himself. And that had to be a torture, because Lizzie can tell you that he never stopped talking. He was one of those chatterboxes.
Oh my God, you could not quiet that man for a second. You couldn't. Like, he was always talking.
He had an energy level was incredible.
And the friendliest person you'll ever, he just would talk to complete strangers.
Right.
And obviously in today's day and age, like, people are not used to a stranger coming up to you and talking to them.
That's right.
So some people would look at him like he's crazy.
Right, exactly.
And we'd be like, oh my God, like, what is he doing? But now, since he's gone, like, we miss that so much. Like, I miss just, like, those phone calls where you wouldn't even get a word in for 30 minutes because he's just talking to you about this, that, and the other thing. You're like, oh my God, Grandpa, like, I just had the worst day ever. And you're just
Yeah.
But now we miss those phone calls,
sure,
you know?
Sure.
But yeah, it's funny because even when he, was, he had a lot of dementia and aphasia and like all that stuff. He would often he would say random things spontaneously about his life back when he lived in Queens, when he was much younger. Like, he thought that he was living there. And looking back at it now, I almost feel like God was with him that whole time, and he was like taking him through his life.
Right.
And
well, he loved,
what I mean?
He loved his childhood. Absolutely.
Oh my
loved
God,
it.
yeah.
And it allowed him to relive it.
100%.
For a time. Yeah.
And we'll never know that fully because we don't know what was going through his head at the time, but we all felt like he was still there in his head. He was just not able to fully express his emotions.
Right.
Because there was that block there, obviously.
Well, and he was a very honest person.
Yeah.
Straightforward. He never held himself back saying anything.
Oh, filter.
No, that's it. He wanted people to know his honest opinion and feelings and whatever. And after he passed, I can't tell you how much love came through from old friends, new friends. I got notes that said he helped me so much when I was in college. He did this, he did that. I was overwhelmed with how much love and like Lizzie's saying, no filters. He was that type of guy that it was, take me for who I am because I'm not changing, and this is what you're going to get.
Right.
This is me, and people loved it. They loved the honesty.
He was the most authentic person you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
He was never trying to be someone else.
That's right.
Never.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he could spot a phony a mile away.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the way he was. He was so honest. And, but anyhow, so one of the things I had, the last thing I had, was talking about his passing and what I learned from it. And I kind of expressed it that I had to let go. That was the lesson that I learned, that to if I really loved him and he was very special and everything, and this whole ordeal was coming to an end, I had to let it go.
Yeah.
And I grieved. I'm still grieving. I have half of a heart.
Right.
But I'm still happy for him.
Yeah.
And it just the whole experience was very spiritual.
Yeah.
It was a very spiritual. For me, it was very spiritual, and for him, I know.
For sure.
But
and it's crazy how many lessons I've learned from him not being here anymore. Like, it's insane to me. Like, I feel like I'm learning these lessons indirectly from him when he's still he's not here presently. But I feel him more than ever. Like, like me and my grandma and my mom really symbolize him with cardinals. And we see cardinals everywhere. And, sometimes I'll be having a bad day and I'm like, Grandpa, if you're here, can you just try your best to bring a cardinal to me? And without a doubt, every time I see one. When I have really bad weeks or really good weeks, that's when I see the most cardinals. And it's just like, I know he's here. I know he's here.
Right.
And I'm sure you feel that way too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so the lesson that you learned from that was that you need to let go and that you can't control.
And trust in God.
And trust in God. Fall back on your faith. The big thing,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Without that, I would have never made it through.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there were times that I couldn't hold him in my arms for one more second.
Yeah.
He was falling to the ground and blah, 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 blah. And I would just say, oh, God, you got to help me.
Yeah.
And I got a burst of energy that gave me that to thrust him up again. And so
by the way, my grandma's shorter. She's like 4'9".
No, I'm
you're
5'1".
shrinking. You're shrinking. You're not 5'1" anymore. I'm 5'2", and you're a lot shorter than me now. She's shrinking a lot. Italian women shrink as age gets up. But I cannot believe that she even had the strength to lift him I mean, he's a man. Obviously, he was a lot lighter when he was sick.
Yeah, but dead
he
weight,
was dead
anyhow.
weight. He couldn't help her out at all. And she said to me over the phone once that she got that strength from God. That's the only way that she could have ever lifted him. Looking back at it now, she has no idea how she did it, and it's no surprise.
No,
it was God helping you the whole time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And faith is the most important thing. I think you have to have that.
Yeah.
And because we all come against bad times and sad times and everything.
Right.
Who do you go to for support and help? And how do people get through those things without any faith?
Right.
Without talking to God, without asking God for help? But I don't know how.
And I think, people's argument all the time with faith is that if God exists, then why did bad things happen in the world? And I don't think that's fair to say, because like we're talking about today, the overarching theme of this is that the bad things, all the pain that you go through and that you endure, is what transforms into purpose. It's what brings you purpose into your life. It's what teaches you the most impactful lessons. You don't forget all of the painful stuff that you've been through. That's a part of who you are. If you could go back and you can completely change a situation and make it better than what it was, you would not be the person you are today.
Right.
You would not have learned any of the lessons you learned today. Life is not sunshine and rainbows.
No, it
isn't.
Not. No, it isn't.
And I think that's what's so innocent about your youth, is that you don't really see all the bad things about the world yet. So you're not necessarily learning all the impactful lessons yet. You're learning how to live presently. And I think our biggest problem is that we forget that. We forget how to live presently the older that we get. We weren't meant to do that. And going back to Grandpa, I have a tattoo on my arm. I don't know if you saw it, but it's Grandpa's handwriting. Have you seen it?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's what he... Oh my God, I can't believe this is in the podcast. You're seeing my tattoo for the first time. It's what he wrote in the back of his prayer book. Without your consent, it's impossible for you to be a failure. And it's in his handwriting. And one of the quotes that was right above that was... I'm going to butcher it, but it was something about, a man's biggest mistake is... losing their youth, something like that. I just butchered it completely, but it was basically saying you're meant to keep that childlike part of you with you at all times.
Absolutely.
You're not supposed to lose that part of you.
Be present to the present.
Yeah,
that's it.
I love that.
And when you're young, you want to be an adult, or we want to rush our lives, and you don't want to experience everything. You just want to all of a sudden be 30, or all of a sudden you want to be this, or you want to be that. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. You have to go through every day, and whatever you're experiencing, you learn from that.
Yep.
Okay? It could be a breakup of a friendship.
Right.
It could be anything.
Yeah.
Somebody being mean to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gives you character. It makes you, like you just said, who you are.
Right.
Because your reaction to all of those experiences is what makes it.
Yeah. And one thing that I always fall back on, too, when talking about faith, God always responds in 3 ways. It's either a yes, it's a not yet, or it's a I have something better for you.
Beautiful.
Right?
That absolutely.
So it's never a no. It's never him shunting you. He knows exactly what is meant for you. He knows the
what's
timing.
Best for you.
What's best for you. The time you think you know what's best for you, but you really don't.
That's right.
You really don't. You think of all the friends that you've had in your life where by the end of your friendship they fizzled out into a different person that you didn't even know before. You thought you knew that person. Right. You were friends with them for 6 years maybe. And then the last year that you were friends with them, they were a completely different person to you, because people change,
Absolutely.
They meet people through their life that impact them in different ways.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say that it always impacts them in a good way. maybe they haven't learned their lessons yet. Maybe
Right.
you're at a different stage in your life than they are, and you outgrow people. It's part of the process.
Oh, sure.
But it's about what you do with that and how you learn from it and grow from it. And that's such a big theme of my podcast. It's just growing and healing. And like, I think that we're constantly healing, like you said,
that's true,
like
yeah.
you've grieved from the loss of grandpa, but you'll always be grieving.
Always. Always.
And I feel the same way. Emotions come and go.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a part of your heart that will never heal from.
Right.
Certain, you know how they say when someone passes away that you really love, that they left their footprints on your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they took some of your heart too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to talk about when my older daughter was 5. And my younger daughter, which is Lizzie's mom, and my younger daughter was 3. And I'll try to make the story short. I was pulling my car into my garage.
Oh, I know this one.
Okay? And it was winter, and I didn't really heat the car up because I was just putting it in the garage because we were expecting a snowstorm the next day. And I knew I wasn't going to be driving. And my husband would take his little Volkswagen. He was just a phys ed teacher, and he would take his little Volkswagen to school, and he would get there fine. So I said to him, I'll pull the car in. Why don't you go to the bakery? I had just put all our Christmas decorations away. You go to the bakery. I'll put a pot of water on for tea, and when you come, get back, we'll have, and the day that way,
Yeah.
And but when I pulled the car in the garage, the things in the garage were set up for the Volkswagen. So I didn't think I had enough room for my Dodge. So I got out of the car to move like the barbecue up more and this out of the way. And we're talking about, all right, so if she was if she was 5, whatever, the gears this were on the steering wheel then, not the floor console. Right. And I thought I had pushed it all the way up into park.
Yeah.
But evidently it didn't really go all the way. When I got out of the car, I slammed the door shut so I could get around it, and the car started to go back in reverse. So it slipped into reverse. It's exiting the garage, and I ran after it to open the door to hit the brake to stop it.
Yeah.
And the door pinned me into the corner of the garage.
Yeah.
Broke both my wrists, crushed my pinky on my right hand. The chrome on the door cut open my shoulder, and I threw a heavy winter parka.
Wow.
The bottom of the door was crushing my leg, my left leg. I don't know how the bone never broke, and the orthopedic surgeon didn't even know. He said impossible, but it didn't break, thank God. And so, needless to say, and my older daughter was by the side door waiting for me to come in. She saw that I disappeared into the corner of the garage, and she knew, and the back of the car is out, and the front of the car is in.
Yeah.
She came running out, and she thought if she closed the door I would be okay, but she couldn't because it was into my body. And I'm picturing myself, my heart being crushed, my bones being broken, all of this going on.
Yeah.
I was picturing my life was just going in front. Oh my
eyes.
God.
And your daughter was watching you.
And I thought I was going to die. I actually thought I would die there. And I quickly said, please God, don't let me die for a stupid thing like this. And she went and got a neighbor, and the neighbor came, and his wife pulled the car forward. He grabbed me, carried me into the house, called the volunteer fire department. They rushed me to the hospital, and okay, so 6 weeks of healing.
Yeah.
And in that 6 weeks, sitting in a chair, unable to walk because my leg was hurting, all the other injuries, my 2 arms in casts and all that, you learn how to surrender all of what you're going through to be well again.
Yeah.
I said I will never complain about scrubbing my floor on my knees again. I can't wait to do it.
Yeah.
You know, you see the things that used to be a challenge to you in life as a gift now.
Yeah, it puts it into perspective for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You actually learn how precious life is.
Yeah.
Because it could have been snuffed out in a second.
Yeah.
And gave me more of an appreciation, I have to say, an awareness of how wonderful it is to be alive and to be healthy, especially.
Yeah.
And of course, again, now someone else had to take care of my girls. So my mother-in-law came and stayed.
Mm-hmm.
Every week she came from Monday to Friday, went home on the weekends, and she did that, God bless her, for 6 weeks. And there again, I had to humble myself to accept help from somebody else, you know, and she was great about it. And we got through. That was a big challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the lesson there, I think, was just really how precious life is. And
how easy it can be.
And you know, away. No matter how mundane your life can be, it's wonderful.
Right. And actually, I would add to that and say, your life is what you make it.
Absolutely.
You have to look for the magic in life.
Absolutely.
You have to look for all the special moments. And part of that, I'd say actually all of it, is being present. You don't see all the magic in life if you're always looking for the next big thing. You're missing right now. You're missing everything right now.
The simple little things. And they become so profound when you're in a situation like that. Or if you think about it, you know, if you're the type of person who would meditate about something like that, it is so profound you can't believe.
Yeah.
You can't believe.
For sure.
Okay, so that's that one.
Yeah.
Now, my last one, or we can expound on things, is 13 years ago I had breast cancer. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a serious one, very aggressive. I needed the surgery, and I needed chemotherapy, and I needed radiation. That was a tough thing to swallow, but I accepted it as I'm getting through this.
Right.
You know, it's going to be a challenge. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And every day may be different, and every treatment may be different, and whatever. And but something inside of me just gave me a strength.
Yeah.
And I said, whatever will be, will be. And I prayed, of course, to survive.
Yeah.
Which I have for 13 years, thank God.
Right.
And whatever I had to go through wasn't that monumental. And also, every person, every technician, every doctor, every nurse that I encountered along the way, from pre-surgery to surgery to treatment to radiation, everything, all the tests in between, and there were many of them.
Yeah.
Everyone was wonderful.
Wow.
So wonderful that they were giving me the strength I needed. They were giving me the positivity.
Yeah.
Just by their demeanor and just by their...
You know what? And people can pick up on energy, too. They picked up on your energy. They knew, it's no doubt. You don't have to look very closely with you to know that you're a good person that just has good intentions.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, so they picked up on that energy. And people in healthcare, you know, like, they work with people who are hard to work with. Some patients can be really hard on them.
Oh, sure.
Really hard on them. So having a patient like you that, you know, would go by the doctor's orders, do exactly what they're supposed to do, and also treat them with kindness at a point in your life where you were going through so much pain and suffering.
Well, and I appreciated everything that they did to alleviate anything I was going through.
Yeah.
You know, they were like angels to me, who you know, who were lifting this burden, and And I honestly can say it was every single one. Now, that accident that I had in the garage, I remember when they rushed me to the hospital, this young girl was the x-ray technician. To just show you the difference in
right.
I was on the table for the x-rays.
Yeah.
And now I had 2 broken wrists and a smashed pinky.
Right.
Okay? That was only half the pain, or not even.
Right.
She took my arm and laid it down beside me to take the x-ray, and I went, oh, like, I didn't scream, I didn't yell at me. She said, I don't want to hear anything like that.
Oh my!
I don't want to. I could have cried. I held back tears because I didn't want to give in to her. But you could see the difference.
Yeah.
She was mean. That was a mean thing to do.
Wow.
Somebody, I was just in an accident, and the way she treated me and spoke to me made me feel horrible inside. These people were, I'm telling you, they were angels.
Yeah, wow.
And what a difference.
Wow.
So that's another lesson you can learn, that there's good and bad in everything. And
100%, yeah.
So
I mean, and the only thing that you can control is your reactions and the way that your energy that you put out into the world. You can't control whether someone's going to treat you nicely or
that's
not.
Right.
But you can control your reaction to how they treat you.
Right.
Like, you should never fight violence with violence. You should never fight fire with fire. It's never going to work. You only react in love. If someone's going to, say horrible things about you, even if they aren't true.
Right.
If you retaliate and you say horrible things about them, then that proves that you are doubling down, and now your character is being matched to their horrible character.
Right, exactly.
Now, you're not making yourself a better person by defending yourself. You are just doubling down to who they are.
Their level.
And now you look just as bad as they do. But if you just didn't respond to it, didn't react to it, let it not faze you as much as you can, and fall back on the fact that you know who you are, and you know that you're a good person, that what they're saying is not true, then that's all you need at the end of the day,
Right.
Yeah. So the biggest lesson you learned with breast cancer
was the goodness. Going through something like that, how much goodness helped me get through it. My faith in God, and believe it or not, later on, when my husband had his stroke and Parkinson's and everything else with it, dementia. I mean, he had everything going at one time, which was the downfall. I realized that maybe one of the reasons why I survived my cancer was because God knew I had to take care of him.
Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. You just blew my mind.
Yeah,
wow.
I think about that all the time, and I thank God for that. That he, pulled me through it and gave me the strength to take care of my husband.
Yeah.
And his time of need.
For sure.
I mean, when you think about it, if I wasn't around anymore, what was going to happen to Grandpa? Who would take care of him? He'd probably end up in a...
He would have had to live the end of his life without the love of his life.
Oh, that's nice.
He wouldn't have been he wouldn't have been surrounded by as much love.
That's right. You're right. You're right.
And that's what he needed. Because he couldn't express the love, but he could receive it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
He did say something to me, and I can't believe I'm saying this now but one day he was sitting in his wheelchair and he was watching TV, and I was hustling and bustling around because it was a nonstop. I mean, from the moment I opened my eyes to the time he went to bed, that I got him in bed, it was nonstop. Crushing pills and trying to feed him, and he was in a diaper, and I bathed him. I had to bathe him in bed every day because I couldn't get him into a bathroom. And he loved his showers. He would take 2 showers a day if he wanted to. I bathed him from head to toe, and and he just was so cooperative. He was such a good patient, and he was an impatient person,
right?
But he was a good patient. He never complained, never said a bad word through it or nothing. One day he's sitting in the wheelchair, and I says, "Oh, let me just take a breather. And I sat in the chair right next to him, and I was holding his hand, and I waited 5 minutes, got up, and started to walk away, and he grabbed my arm to stop me from leaving. And I thought, oh, I'm hurting his feelings by leaving. And he said, and I repeat that he said this very lucidly, I only hope that I could give you as much as you give me.
Oh.
I wanted to die, and I said, Bill, you've given me a wonderful life.
Yeah.
We've had such a wonderful, you gave me a home, children that we love, simple things.
Yeah.
Not anything big, not anything luxurious.
Right.
Simple things, because we were simple people. We didn't need anything to, and I didn't know how to express how much I appreciated everything to make him feel good about it, And but I couldn't believe that he had the thought in his head to thank me and say, I wish I could give you more, and he blew me away.
And I'm sure that meant a lot to you at the time. I know I can tell it means a lot to you now too, because like you said, you listed only not even half of the things that you were doing for him, and he wasn't able to thank you verbally.
Right.
Like, you knew that he was grateful, obviously.
Right.
We know Grandpa to be a very grateful person.
Oh, yeah.
But he wasn't able to express that to you, so that's just something you had to tell yourself in your head. And the fact that he was able to, vocalize that to you at a time where he wasn't able to vocalize really anything.
No, and how he realized that he wasn't able physically to do anything.
Right.
And he processed that, which I thought was a miracle in itself.
Right.
And then expressed it on top of it. It was those are the things that when I think about, I have memories, and of course wonderful memories from our courtship up, those are the things that happened just between the two of us alone in the house.
Yeah.
Him sick, not being able to do anything and say anything, but a connection that you would not believe.
Yeah.
I had an aide that came in for a couple of hours, to help me get him into bed.
Yeah.
Okay. I had an aide in the morning it was the same guy, and he would come in the morning to help me get him out of bed and whatever, but most of the time I did it myself because either they were late or whatever. And the aide would leave at lunchtime.
Yeah.
And I could see Grandpa, because now I was giving him his lunch and everything, so relieved and so happy that it was just the two of us.
Oh.
He didn't like having a stranger in the house. He didn't feel private or whatever. I could tell by the expression and that he was looking forward to having lunch with me,
Oh.
It was a lot that people don't know. That it's personal and it's private.
Yeah.
But I so enjoyed that. I really. Even then, we had good times together.
Right. Right. I mean, and like going back to what we said before, it's like you have to still look for the good, even when it's bad, even when it's unfortunate, because even when your husband was sick, you still had him. He was still there.
Oh, absolutely.
It was a blessing that you were still able to take care of him.
Absolutely.
And your health was good enough to take care of him.
Absolutely. I didn't want to have to institutionalize him at all.
Right. None of us wanted that.
And this was his house.
Yeah.
I wanted him there. His friends would come and visit.
Yeah.
I could take him outside. He saw the neighbors.
Yeah.
They would come over and talk to him and everything. That's what I wanted for him.
Yeah.
Which is not anything really big or anything, but that was our life. And I tried to keep it as normal as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned just from YouTube is to live life simply. You guys never needed anything extravagant. You never went on any big vacations. You never spent your money on really big things that you just wanted and didn't actually need. You lived a simple life. You lived in the same house your entire life.
Right.
Barely changed anything about it. And I loved that so much because your house is still the same that it was when I was younger.
Right.
And I love that so much because it's so nostalgic to me, and it brings me a sense of comfort, you know? And I just feel like there's so much to be said about the simplicity of life. We weren't put here to find gratification and satisfaction in materialistic things.
That's right. Material
things. It's not the point of life. And they only last so long. You know, when you go out to shop and you find stuff that you really like that you spent your money on, yeah, it feels good. You get a little dopamine boost for a good 20 minutes, and then you get home and you forget you even got it.
Right.
And then you use that purse every now and then, but does it bring you the same satisfaction it did when you first got it? No.
Absolutely. Materialism is
yeah. And it's not to say that you can't have nice things in life.
That's right.
If you work hard for your money and stuff, that's a part of life too. Money's not the root of all evil, but it's also not it's not the purpose of life. We've made it out to be. We've made it out to be the thing that all of us are striving for in our life is to get the most money that we possibly can, because nowadays it's like you can't even live the life you want to without money. You know, back when you were growing up, you didn't really need it that much. We
just didn't have that much.
You didn't have it, and you dealt with what you had, and you were happy with it.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Exactly. You have to be happy with what you have. You can't always be wanting and wanting and wanting and putting yourself in debt for things.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Grandpa taught me a lesson one day. Not that, like you said, we were simple, so it didn't. But he was outside and he said, "Joe, come on out a minute. I got to show you something." There was an elderly couple that lived on the block up from us,
right?
And they never had children.
Yeah.
And they had a niece who, you know, they bothered with or were close with, and
right.
So when they passed away, and they both passed away very close to each other.
Yeah.
Okay? They left everything to her.
Wow.
Okay? So she's over there and she's doing things, and he called me outside and he said, "Look at that." And I looked up the block. The curb was loaded with everything from the house. She was just putting things out to the garbage.
Yeah.
Just putting things out. And he turned around to me, he says, "You see that?" He says, "That's what's going to happen to us and our things someday."
Wow.
They don't mean anything.
Wow, yeah.
They don't mean anything. People mean things.
Yeah.
People are the most important thing to you.
100%.
And loving them and them loving you and you telling them that you love them.
Yes.
Just loving them.
Or showing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just knowing that you love them is not enough. They have to know it too.
Right. Yeah.
They have to know it.
Yeah. That's huge.
Because you know what? Life is very short. Mm-hmm. And in a split second, like we said, anything can happen. And I don't want to die with regrets.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I'm very cognizant, especially because of what I went through with Grandpa, very cognizant that, you know, do a little something special for that person, and that neighbor was kind to you, so reciprocate a little bit, or this, that, and the other. And that's the way I want to go out. I want to go out not owing anything to anybody, because I don't want to. I don't want to owe anything to anybody out of love.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
You know, that
you want everyone to know how much you loved them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the little simple things. And, you know, if I bake them a cake.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, this woman makes it very clear that she loves you. Just in her baking alone, she puts love into every cake she makes, every baked good she makes. Oh my God, yeah. That's honestly one of the questions I was going to ask you is, what do you regret not doing when you were younger?
When I was younger? When
you were younger.
You mean before my marriage, or
whenever? You know, now I'm talking to my grandma. Okay. She's 80 years old now. and she's in great health. I mean, we just walked like 3 miles and she was keeping up fine. And yeah, so you could take it in the perspective of health, of anything.
I know the answer. I know my answer. I regret becoming a secretary. Okay, that
Interesting.
I felt like, what was I there for? To make money for this huge company? More money, money. I regret not doing something to help others. An occupation, or, not even a therapist like your mom is. I don't know if I could have done anything like that. But just an occupation that would give back.
Yeah.
That would pay it forward for everything that I had.
Yeah.
Okay? One thing I did do that I'm so happy I did, and I'm not saying this now to brag or anything, but I was so grateful to have 2 healthy children. Mm-hmm. Okay? I said, I'd like to do something.
Yeah.
And God knew it. He just knew I wanted something. And an elderly friend of ours came over one day, and he said to me, I loved him. I loved him like a grandfather, He said to me, you know what's going on at that school in Massapequa? I said, what? He said, it's a school for physically challenged children.
Wow, yeah.
I said, really? He says, yeah. He says, and they're looking for volunteers.
Ah.
I said, really? And what do the volunteers do? He says, they transport the kids around to their therapies and stuff like that. I said, that sounds interesting. He never told me that he was a volunteer. He just told me that he knew of it.
Really?
Yeah, which was a very humbling thing. Okay?
Yeah.
And I didn't tell him that, thank you, because you just put something in my head now.
Yeah.
A couple of days later, I called up the school, and I said, I'm considering, I think, you're looking for volunteers. And I said, I'm considering volunteering for and the woman said to me, oh, that's wonderful. I said, I understand they're physically handicapped. Yes, they are. I said, well, do I need a certain qualification to, She said, yeah, you need love.
Oh.
And I said, that's fine. And so I said, well, what do I have to do? And she says, come in one day, go into the volunteers room. They'll suit you up with the, uniform.
Yeah.
And that's it. Of course, that was a long time ago.
Right.
We did have to be fingerprinted.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. We were grandfathered, so we didn't have to be. After us, they had to be fingerprinted because things started to get crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. I volunteered there over 40 years. It was the greatest thing I ever did. So I felt that my desire to have an occupation or something never came to fruition, but now I was giving back to God my 2 healthy children by helping these other children. And let me tell you something, they gave more to me than I could ever give to them.
Wow.
You had to love them. They were such loving kids. To see 2 kids sitting next to each other in the cafeteria in wheelchairs, one helping the other eat.
Oh.
Because he knew his friend couldn't use his hands. He was helping him eat.
Right.
You talk about real love.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They were just incredible.
Yeah.
So I was fulfilled that way.
Yeah. And it's crazy how things like panned out for you too, because you were able to live your life, not focusing on a career that brought in an income for you, because you were lucky enough to just be able to live off of one income, off of grandpa's income, with your 2 kids. Obviously things were different at the time. If you were living in nowadays, you wouldn't have been able to do that. But
it was relative because we were putting them through parochial school, which was an added expense, all of that. But you're right. Things were much simpler.
By no means were you guys like the wealthiest people in the world, but you didn't need a lot of money.
Right. Right.
And I just think that that's really special because you were able to do that, and you were able to just focus on being a mother as your occupation. You probably would have never volunteered for those 40 years if you had another job. That's
right.
You would have told yourself, I don't have the time to do it.
That's right.
You know, and I think, like, that's where so many people get lost now. It's like, I don't want to say it's everyone's fault. I think nowadays it's like everyone needs money so bad to do everything they want to do, and that's what everyone's focused on. And so obviously everyone's just working. And we were even talking about it today when we were walking, like, everyone's burnt out.
Yeah.
We were walking today, me, my mom, and my grandma, and it was a beautiful day. I mean, we've had, for the past 2 weeks, it has been nothing but humid and rainy and disgusting outside. And today, I mean, it was beautiful out. There was a nice breeze. I wasn't sweating. Like, I wasn't sweating.
Right.
It was amazing. Right. And it's August, you know? And not a single person was outside playing with their kids, having dinner, anything, just sitting outside. Right. No one was outside. Right. It was, and we were like, what has it come to? But I think, like, we're also burnt out that no one even feels like they have the time to just sit and be present for a second outside with the people that they love, just spending time with them, because we feel like we always have to be doing something else.
Right.
Or else we're not doing it right, or else we're going to fall behind in work. We're not going to, meet the quota that we're supposed to meet. It's like our whole life is deadlines. Our whole life is checking things off a to-do list, and it's like,
absolutely,
what does it come to? Like, that's not what we were put here to do, you know?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's such a fast pace that you don't have, like you said, you don't have time to think of anything else. And then you know, after a day's work or whatever, you come home and you kind of only focus on sitting in a chair maybe and watching TV because you want to get rid of everything else you went through that day.
Yep.
Because it's so overwhelming. It's, you know.
But then with, like, social media, it's like the ways that we try to cope with a really stressful, overwhelming, overstimulating day is by overstimulating our brains.
Right.
So then you're scrolling, and with TikTok, it's like the way that it was designed is to be faster than any other social media. So you scroll, one video that you're watching is 30 seconds long, and it has the power to make you so incredibly sad and think about all of the sad things that have happened in your life. And then you do one swipe of your finger, and the next video is the happiest video you've ever seen in your life. Our brains were not conditioned to be able to regulate our emotions to that extent.
Right.
We were not meant to feel that drastic change of emotion so fast.
Right.
And it's affecting us.
Sure.
I see it affecting us, especially with my generation.
Right.
Like, it's 90% of the people you encounter are not happy. And they're just trying to find the will to keep going because they're telling themselves, maybe something will be better. Maybe it's going to be better. Maybe we're going to be happier. Maybe something's going to switch. But then we're just feeding our brains nothing but nonsense and overstimulation and things that are just not good for us. And then obviously it's curated to our brains to make it overstimulate our brains, so we keep going back to it. And now we're addicted.
Absolutely.
Now we're absolutely addicted. And it's so upsetting because it's like we've lost all sense of humanity. Like no one, like we said in the beginning, no one just goes and talks to strangers anymore.
No, that's right.
You're afraid of people now. We're afraid of people.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. People are genuinely, something that I like to do is whenever I encounter someone in their place of work, whether it be a cashier, someone stocking shelves, whatever it is, I always ask how they are. I always ask, "Oh, how are you?" And I say it in a way where I genuinely mean it and I want to know how they are.
Right.
I pause after I say it. I'm not just, when I go and order my coffees, I'm not just like, "How are you?" "Oh, can I have a cold brew?" No, I pause for a second. Right. And most of the time, people are so surprised that you took the time out of your day to just ask how they are. They're so surprised.
Right.
And most of the time, you know what ends up happening? I end up having a lovely conversation with them. And it's probably one of the only conversations they had with someone their entire shift. Their entire shift. It's insane to me how we've just all lost that sense of humanity completely.
Sometimes just a smile thrown towards someone makes their day.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
100%.
One thing I know that happened to me too when Grandpa was sick.
Yeah.
When he was in the rehab facility after the stroke, I tried to get there as early as possible in the morning. I was there from like 8 in the morning till 8 at night.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in the morning, believe it or not, before I went there, I tried to get some errands done.
Yeah.
And of course, the supermarkets are the ones that are always open early. So I ran in one day, trying to get something, and I'm looking to see which is the shortest line. There was nobody in the store, but there was like only one register open.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, oh, maybe I should do this, or maybe I'll go over here. And I'm going back and forth looking like a maniac.
Yeah.
Because I had to get to Grandpa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I get online, and this woman in front of me had quite a few things in a basket. She says, why don't you go in front of me? I had one item, you know. And I said, oh, that's okay. And she says, no. I could tell, okay, and it was so kind of her.
Yeah.
She said, I can tell that you're going through something and you're in a hurry, okay? Go ahead of me, she said. And I said, well, I thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then when I did go in front of her, I felt like I owed her an explanation, you know. I didn't want her to think I'm just a nut.
Yeah.
And so I started telling my husband's ill and I'm trying to get to the rehab. And she said, I knew. I could tell by the way you were, you know, hustling around.
Yeah.
And I thanked her a million times. You know, and I got
right.
But just that little bit of kindness that day made my day.
Right.
Made my
and it's not hard.
Well,
it's
now,
not hard.
Now, whenever I'm online, it's funny. Whenever I'm online, I wonder what the person in front of me is going through today.
Wow.
I think about that.
Wow.
That woman made such an impression on me.
Yeah.
That she saw my demeanor.
Yeah.
And knew I was going through something. And I'm saying to myself, even if that person is a little nasty to the cashier, you don't know what that person's going through.
Right.
And maybe just couldn't help themselves.
You know what has made me think of that the most, honestly?
Yeah.
Is driving. When someone cuts you off, when someone, you know, people are just not nice on the roads. They're not. They're not. No one's being respectful. No one really cares about where you have to go.
Absolutely.
They just care about where they have to go.
Absolutely.
And whenever someone cuts me off, whenever something like that happens, you know, your immediate response is like, oh, like, what an ass. But then you're like, maybe they're going through something. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital right now trying to get to their loved ones or something.
Right.
You don't know what someone else is going through.
No, you don't.
You really don't. And if someone reacts in a way that you wouldn't react, it might be because they're just going through something that you wouldn't even be able to fathom at the time. And you can't really take that personally.
You can't judge.
You can only send love to them.
Absolutely.
You know?
Say a prayer for them.
Yeah.
Maybe they need it.
Right.
You know? And you can't judge people. You can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
Right.
So take people from where they're coming.
Yeah.
And be nice to them.
Right.
Just be kind to them. Maybe that'll help them get through what they're going through.
Yeah.
So you're right
For
about
sure.
that. It's
But anyways, is that your last one?
That's it.
That's your last one?
Yes.
All right. I think we can end here.
Okay.
That was such a good talk. I'm so happy. I'm so like literally that's going to be my favorite podcast. I don't care what podcast who I have on from now on.
Don't tell your mother that.
My mom is very jealous that I had my grandma on before her. She is. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
This is a recording I'll have forever, so I'm really grateful for it.
Oh, you're so sweet. I love you.
And I know everyone's going to love it so much. I told my friends that you were coming on and they're so excited. They're so excited.
And I don't charge money for autographs.
You're so funny. But anyways, is there any last thing you want to say?
Just that I love my granddaughter to pieces.
Oh, thank you,
and
Grandma.
this was a very special moment in our lives.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll treasure it for sure.
Yeah, I love you.
But love you too.
All right. Bye, guys. See you next week.